Happy Thursday, guys. Welcome to Jasiri. This is where we have bold conversations that spark the real change. Today, we're diving into another crucial topic that affects us all. Get ready for insightful discussions, fresh perspectives, and thought-provoking takes. Let's get into it.
Now, but before we dive into it, as Kat said, we need to check in on Lolo, our darling sister here, was trending on Wednesday with a few things she had to say about a challenge she saw on TikTok.
Hey, Lolo.
I am not happy today at all. I saw a video on TikTok where another TikToker, a young boy, like he's probably standing behind a house in one dingy place, is asking girls to flash their breasts on TikTok. And I see different girls, not one, not two, not three, flashing their naked breasts on TikTok, and people are watching. And I'm wondering what is happening. And they told me it's a challenge. What would need to happen? We're already seeing girls being raped on a daily basis. Not just raped, killed, assaulted and abused. And yet, our young children are not having sense to be able to keep their modesty. That you will have the effrontery and the audacity to flash your breast to thousands of people on TikTok at the behest of another TikToker, even if they were paying you. We need to stop this. Where are our mothers? Where are our caregivers? Where are our guardians? Our words are going astray on a daily basis.
Auntie, explain yourself.
No, what led to that? I think
honestly,
that she was already feeling. I think that was the day you said, you know.
I've been off this week.
Yeah.
I woke up off, and I woke up off for the first time on Monday. On Monday, and someone showed me a video. I couldn't believe it. My partner just showed me something that. Can I see what girls? He's always laughing that we're always talking about women, empowerment, this and that. And he showed me a video on TikTok. I was mortified. I cannot even lie that. Because I have a girl child, and I would look at my child, just like I project around Blessing, and I see how wholesome their life is. This is another set of women, young girls that are supposed to be growing up, doing something with their lives. They will come on TikTok, a web that is open to all. It's not just the TikToker that is seeing it. It is everybody that is tuned to their life, and they were doing it. I was in shock, you know. And I just came to work. After I did makeup, I just came and sat on my chair earlier. And I just told Richmond to just hold my camera, and I just ranted and I posted. I never even knew that it was going to go viral or that it was going to resonate with a lot of people. I was, in fact, yesterday, I said hello to Abike Dabri, Madam Abike Dabri, and she commented that she saw the video also. I really am an advocate of regulation of social media.
You've talked about it.
I have talked about it, and I think it's something I want to take up seriously. I'm not saying they should gag us or not, but like, it happens on Facebook, on Instagram, I know, when I was on radio. If you're playing somebody's music that is not licensed, your life will go off. Maybe once people start to do anything like pornography or violence or like suicide or things that trigger, it should just cut off. So because if they have no audience, they probably will not do it.
So I think there's several things at play here. You know, we talk about the moral fiber of society and all of that. And it sounds like sometimes we're trying to hold a new, innovative, creative generation to traditional values. But there's something to be said in knowing what to put online and what not to put online. We're talking about young girls here, so it's a TikToker. He's not to blame. He made a call. If he didn't make the call, probably somebody else would have made it. He didn't force them. But this is why I believe psychologists and scientists, when they tell us that the human brain is actually not fully functioned and fully mature to about 21. Because why in your right mind would you think that it was okay for you to raise your top and flash your breast? Your full name is on show for everybody.
It's not your full name, your face.
No, it's not that. The point I'm going to is there's a digital footprint.
Oh, by the way, Lola said the guy was masked.
He was masked. He had a mask half, and he uses
so we don't see his face, but we can see your face.
Sometimes he uses all these apps that...
The last one I wanted to make on that is, companies are doing digital investigations before they hire these days. There are people who have come online to say they lost jobs because of things that they posted 5 years ago.
No, I think
are these girls not? Are we seeing a generation that doesn't understand that an action here is a consequence there?
I think they don't, because we're talking on this table still about Gen Z behavior. Who said it, no? Gen Z behavior, they don't care. Gen Zs just feel, oh yeah, if you don't hire me, somebody else will. I mean, there's no
So the
pressure
thing
on this.
is it really a Gen Z thing? Because honestly, I've always said this, let's be introspective of our own behavior. And this is not me bashing women, but a lot of times we tend to blame men for how they see women. That's their own problem. That's another problem on their own. But we've seen, growing up, I've seen music videos where girls are dancing almost naked and the guys are the ones doing the singing with jeans and fully clad. I don't think it just gets worse with every new generation.
And it's now publicized to the world. Before it was just one video, it's just you and your girl, your friends. But now it's the whole world. Somebody in China is
like when I tell people, I said sometimes women are we are our own problems.
Yes.
Honestly, when I saw what the stunts that Kanye West pulled at the Grammys with his wife, in quote, he was fully clad. She is the one that allowed the humiliation by herself, except she was drugged. Forced, coerced, or something was going on. If she did that of her own free will, who is being dragged? She's the one that put herself out there.
Women cannot be objectified if they don't objectify themselves.
That's the thing. That's where I was going. If you don't see yourself in that way, we can be crying more than the bereaved. Maybe that was the aim all along, and she didn't mind being clad.
You know, on this table, I know how many times we cried last year when we hear about ritual killings on a daily basis. It's getting worse. I saw another pastor yesterday, somewhere, I don't even remember where. I almost tagged Tolu.
I think I saw it.
That he was confessing that he killed a girl to do rituals. And I'm like, you are making yourself out this way. Sometimes people can look at you on the video and they know, okay, this girl is free for all. I'm going to invite her to my house. And that's how they catfish them and bring them.
But on that part, I don't want to, I can't fully agree. Why? I was coming to work this morning and I'm hearing on the radio that a young girl in Lagos went for a job interview January 25th, 28th, thereabouts, and she's been missing since. So whether with women, whether you're naked or you're fully clothed, somebody somewhere will objectify you.
I know.
I don't want us to use that as a justification for the bad behavior of those who end up killing, raping, using for rituals, because there's no justification.
No, I know there's no justification. I just said they make themselves easy prey.
I can agree that making themselves easy target, because even at the end of the day, there's a point that Lola was making. One, I didn't know he was masked. So one, he's masked. Dirty background, as Lola was describing. If you look, there's an aspect that Lola was trying to get to, that maybe there's a poverty mindset.
Of course.
These girls are coming from difficult backgrounds and difficult upbringings.
Honestly, this is a conversation we need to have this more. But we need to go on a break now.
But Blessings is saying no.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's Friday.
Yeah, since we've been talking about me, it's only right that I take us on a break. Today we're focusing on our boys and men. This is a conversation I want to have. Let's talk raising the next generation of Nigerian men with Solomon Ayodele, the founder and CEO of Boys Quarters Africa. He'll be joining us after the break. We'll be right back.
Here on Jasiri, we've spoken many times about one problem that we have identified. That problem is that young boys and men have been left behind in the race to educate and empower women. Today on Jasiri, we're driving into a crucial conversation, raising the next generation of Nigerian men. In a society where masculinity is often defined by rigid stereotypes and outdated norms, how do we raise men who are emotionally intelligent, responsible, and equipped to thrive in today's world? Joining us is Solomon Ayodele. He's the founder and CEO of Boys Quarters Africa, an organization dedicated to reshaping narratives around masculinity and empowering young men to become the best versions of themselves. Now, from tackling toxic masculinity to redefining leadership and responsibility, we'll explore what it truly means to raise men of character in Nigeria today. So how do we break the cycle and build a generation that leads with strength, integrity, and empathy? Let's get into it right here on Jasiri. Solomon, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You're a gentleman among women this morning. You know, we are all women, and sometimes we're always looking from the outside in, especially when it concerns men. We are boy moms. Yes. Tolu maybe is a potential boy mom too. Of course. And, you know, but there is a problem with our boys and our men. And it's important that we hear from the inside. We are focused a lot on educating and empowering girls and women, and it seems like we have left boys and men behind. Is that something, or is it just something we just think about?
I totally agree. There is a masculine crisis in Africa. We started Boy Scouts in 2018, and I was at Babcock University that year, and it was the convocation. And the former governor of Ogun State was trying to present the awards. Best student in this faculty was a girl, the next faculty was a girl, and the man just screamed, "What is the problem with our boys?" That moment I realized there's a burden in my heart and I needed to just find a way to express. And I grew up with 4 brothers. My dad is a pastor, and think about everything young men do. The 5 of us did it. Despite the fact that we are disciplined parents. My mom was a teacher before she passed. You know, proper attention, don't do this, don't do that, right? I then realized that there's a gender box we've placed boys into, where there's an assumption that boys will by default become responsible, right? So the way we raise girls to say, sit this way, talk this way, dress this way.
Is that how you do in your husband's house?
Do you understand? So everyone is raising girls to become a good wife. No one is raising boys to become responsible men and husbands. So the problem is we have a lot of amazing, and I tell people in the next 10 to 15 years, there's going to be a crisis. We're going to have well-raised, well-tutored, amazing ladies who cannot get married yet. Not because they are not ready to get married, but because there are no responsible men who can, you know, mentally and emotionally even, you find it difficult to see young boys with conversation. So I've traveled.
He's been reading my notes. He's been reading my notes.
I almost said we need feathers or something on this table, because when they are dropping on it, we need something to shake.
I'll work on it.
Yeah, so I've traveled across, you know, Africa just talking to boys, and they are not able to look into your faces to have conversation. And you walk to an 11-year-old girl and you want to talk to the girl, and you're just amazed at the level of maturity, the level of dexterity, how they're able to put themselves together. But you see a young boy at the age of 11, I grew up that way too. Everybody just assumes you're a guy, you'll be fine. You're a boy, don't worry, you'll be fine. No, what are you doing in the kitchen? What are you saying? My friend, leave the kitchen, go and play with your friends. This is how we have raised a lot of irresponsible men. And so the society is demanding out of men what we have not invested in boys. So the issue is not even about trying to make the crayfish. Right? The issue is we need to go back and say, how do we fix this crisis? And we need to go back talking to boys. Right? So I hosted a summit 2 years ago, a boy child summit in Lagos, and a boy walked up to me and said he's been doing drugs since the age of 11. Do they know in school? No. Do they know at home? No. How do you do this? Said after school he has a couple of his friends where they just, you know, all of that. And you expect that kind of boy, he's probably a Christian, maybe he plays drums in church. And religion will find a way to pad you into a certain state. And you turn 30 and you get married to a girl who the parent has been investing in, mentoring, raising, paying attention to, and there's crisis in the marriage. The man is not able to raise another child. The man is not able to emotionally or intelligently engage the woman. So there is, by default, a crisis. So I agree that we're not paying attention to boys. So all of the stick we're throwing at men, you cannot blame them because there wasn't any investment.
So
the call is coming from inside the house.
That's what was going into this as we were talking. This phrase entered my head. This ingrained culture of traditional masculinity. Correct. I think that's what it is. So sometimes, most times, you see men who, just like you say, they don't feel they're accountable for anything. They're allowed to just pander and just meander through life while the woman is doing the hard work. And when you were spitting these bars, the ladies are looking at one another because
Catherine has fallen in love. I just see there are stars in her eyes.
We know that we have been talking this thing, but God bless you for you being the trumpet to sound it. This is the judgment day. Because most times we say it, but it's like because we are women, we are not probably speaking from emotions. But hearing it from you, that is what just beats me. So for me now, what do you think would be this, with this traditional masculinity? What are the biggest challenges that men face? Because mind you, it's something that can easily seep into the next generation of boys. So what would be one of the biggest, or what would you say would be the biggest challenges facing young boys today in Nigeria?
I think number one, let's start from the parents, right? 2019, I had gone to speak on a TV station and I was just talking about the same problems. And a colleague of mine who, I mean, I have a 9-to-5 as a banker, right? A colleague of mine called me who has 2 sons, said, see, Solomon, all these things you're saying about boys, just stop, you know, boys will be okay, boys will be fine. All this one you're saying, boys can, and there's another part around the menace, around the abuse of boys.
Yes, we're getting there as
major,
well.
We ran a survey in 2020, about 2,000 men above the age of 18. Now we realized that 97% of them had their first intercourse before the age of 18, meaning they were abused, they were raped, right? So you see those men carry those kind of baggages into marriages, and you expect them to live an awesome life. So it is, I mean, so let's start from parenting. It's a major case. The way parents raise their sons. There's an undertone where you feel like, as a girl, I need to pay attention to you. You need to do this. But we should pay the same attention to boys too.
Yeah.
So I tell people, I say, God bless my late mom. You know, you say 2 things. My mom throws omorogun at you, you know, throws slippers at you, you know. And some of those things are the things that have shaped me. So people said, you know, do you have a girlfriend when you were in the university? I tell people no. And they say, why? I said, I was scared of my mom. I was actually scared of my mom because my mom would tell you, that you wear boxers for 5 days and you want to have a girlfriend.
Mommy, in your grave, sleep well. Continue resting.
You know, my mom would clear you to say, Oga, who wants to date you? Who wants to, you are not even responsible enough, right? So I think parenting is a major thing. We need to be able to hold boys to a higher standard. Because when you think about it, the expectation is men are supposed to lead. So when you're raising leaders, by default, there are standards. You shouldn't say, oh, don't come to the kitchen. You must tell boys, sweep the floor, wash the plate, do the dishes, right? These are things that can help them.
They're life skills.
Yes, life skills. Number 2 is religion is a major issue. So whatever you believe in church, you know, and all of that, there's a way religion has helped us raise a lot of irresponsible people.
Yes.
Men, most importantly, right? Because the responses to the misbehavior of men is women be humble.
Go into the war room.
Do you understand?
Him,
so you
make him angry.
So you don't keep placing pressure on women. So what you would do is 52 weeks, you would host 52 meetings for women. How to be a better wife, how to be a better woman, how to be a praying woman, how to be a humble. But there are men there who are responsible, who spend their time drinking and boozing and, you know, picking up girls and all of that. Nothing to speak to them. So, and the same thing. So you see people having girls group in churches now, in religious organizations. So religion too is a major thing. We have sort of built a system where, right, so it's important, it's a barrier. And I think the society as a whole, right, there's a need for us to change the way we see this conversation. To say, when we talk about boys, it's not an anti-feminism movement. We're not trying to say, oh, boys too should be. It's a case of we're trying to raise good humans. We're trying to raise balanced people. So when we say raise boys better, it's not because so that they can compete with their girl counterpart. It's because we want a world where we won't start praying for girls to get married. Meanwhile, there are no responsible men for them to get married too.
You can say that again for the people in the back. Okay, so, but, I mean, you talked about baggages, right?
Correct.
And a lot of times when we have conversations like this, most people think that because of how boys are raised into men, they're given a free pass. But there's also the baggages, you know, that they have as well. You know, aside those who get abused, those who suffer some of those things silently, there's also that general expectation that boys don't cry. Crying is for women. This is that. You're to be the provider. You're to do this. You're to do that. And that's why you see suicide rate in men is more. Even if you don't kill yourself, you might die before your time because of the stress that you go through on a normal. So men are more likely to go go through some of these depression and all that, but they bottle it up, right? In the work that you do, what are the things that young boys tell you of their understanding of what it means to be a man? Because most boys and even men do not really understand what being a man should be. They just know what the expectations are of them.
Beyond toxic masculinity, I think there's confused masculinity. There's a community I run called Conversations, where we bring men together to just have open conversation, talk about what you're going through.
How did you come up with these names, by the way?
Right. And beyond the conversation thing, when we talk to boys, some of the things we get as feedback from them is, boys assume you shouldn't cry.
Yeah.
So if a girl falls when playing, they will say, come, let me carry you. If a boy falls, they will say, don't look at the boy, don't look at the boy, leave him, don't let him see that you're showing care. So boys are used to holding their emotions.
Yeah.
I think it's a major problem. There are a lot of emotionally absent men because the way they've been raised in such a way where there's an assumption that, I ran a survey in the class where I asked the boys to say, how many of you have ever seen your father cry? So, I mean, I'm going to turn 33 this year. I've only seen my father cry 3 times all my life. Number 1, when he lost his elder brother.
That's right.
Number 2, when he lost his wife. Number 3, at the graveside. 3 times all my life. But if you ask me, before my mom passed 3 years ago, how many times have you seen your mom cry? Plenty times.
Every day.
We the criers are here.
But Solomon, does that equal? Because crying necessarily is not does not equal emotion.
Absolutely.
So is it not more about having them be open and willing to show emotion, the joy, the sadness, the crying when necessary, not necessarily expression of tears?
So it's even the barest minimum.
Okay.
At least let me see. When a mom is happy, you see it all over. Oh, but when a dad is happy, you just want to put it together. Daddy, we just got a car. Yeah. So boys are used to seeing men as robots. Yeah. Like you don't have to express it. And the truth is, it is a problem, right? So we see a lot of boys mirror their father because they see their father don't laugh, their father don't play, their father don't. So this is why I tell a lot of men, one of the ways to raise healthy boys is to show them how vulnerable you can be. Jump, play, carry them on your shoulder and all of that, right? So a lot of boys say, they assume men don't cry. They assume men shouldn't show their emotions, either happiness or sadness.
You can play with your wife now.
Do you understand? Because they didn't grow up seeing daddy tickling mommy.
For weird.
And sometimes
the witch house.
Sometimes they can trickle into crying in front of your wife and your wife looking at it and saying, not knowing how to deal with it.
And it's a problem too for women. If you see your husband crying now, you be like, okay, what's the problem now?
So there's a response to, so even as we're working to make them more emotionally vulnerable and be free, we need to work on women a little bit to be able to accept it and accept that.
Absolutely.
So Solomon, we're going to go on a break, but very quickly before the break, you mentioned toxic masculinity, and it's a phrase. A lot of people might think it's a new catchphrase that is from, this early period and everything, but it's not. It's gone mainstream. Yeah. And Oxford defines toxic masculinity as a set of attitudes and ways of behaving stereotypically associated with or expected of men, regarded as having a negative impact on men and on society as a whole. So sorry, voices in my head. But some argue that the term toxic masculinity is actually an attack on men rather than a critique of harmful behaviors. So how do we distinguish between holding men accountable and possibly demonizing masculinity? Society needs the two.
Correct.
It's a balance. It's yin and yang, it's feng shui, whatever you want to call it. So how do we focus on changing these behaviors without necessarily making men feel like it's unsafe to be a man?
Tough question to do, I'll tell you, and it's a very thin line, if you ask me. I would say a couple of things. For example, I think it's time we need to start bringing to fore the conversation around empathy for men, right? That's important. The truth is, a lot of men have told me that what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to emasculate them.
I want to believe.
Yeah, they've said, why are you trying to emasculate men? Why are you trying to make men like women, right? And I say, women isn't equal to emotions. Women isn't equal to, right?
Solomon, I love this thing you're saying.
Before, while you're loving him, please let's go on
Let's
a
go on a
break.
break. We'll pick up from this.
Solomon, we need to go on a break. A very interesting conversation about raising the next generation of Nigerian men and looking at the debate of toxic masculinity versus traditional masculinity. We'll pick up on this when we come back. Stay with us.
All right, welcome back to the show. You're still watching Jasiri at News Central TV across all social media platforms. Follow us and be part of our conversations. So just before the break, we were looking at the debate surrounding toxic masculinity and whether it was under threat. Solomon Ayodele is still with us as we get into issues around raising the next generation of Nigerian men. So I want to pick up from where we start. But before then, I want to also top it up by asking you, Solomon. So how do we try to navigate, what does it mean to be a man in Nigeria, and how do we address the challenges that come with this? Because we always have the perception that this masculinity, this type of masculinity that you're propagating will weaken boys. I don't like the word weaken, but you know,
I think I should also put it out there before I answer both questions to say being a man is hard. In fact, being human is hard. You know, you get to a point as a man, you feel like people don't get it. There's a lot of things going on in your head, right?
Are those based on societal expectations?
Exactly.
The same way we feel expectations, Blessings once called it the ticking time bomb about getting married and being pregnant. Are those things in your head and the pressure based on societal expectations?
I think it's a combination of both.
Okay.
And I'm going to use myself as a practical example. So, ideally, you know, when someone sees me and says, "Oh, Solomon, why are you not married?" Right? I know it is coming from a genuine place to say, "Oh, at this age, you have a good job, you have things going on for you, just settle down." But at the back of my mind, there's why are you putting me under pressure? Let me just live my life, right? On the other hand, it is coming from a place where people just wanting to make progress, you know, start your family and all of that, right? So I would say being a man can be very hard, most importantly because we live in a world where there are a lot of misinterpretations, there are a lot of misconstrued understanding about being a man. In fact, the definition from the background is a bit skewed, right? So when we talk about toxic masculinity, I would say the way to balance it is to, first of all, be able to push the narrative around men being accountable and responsible. If that sets the tone of any kind of masculinity we're talking about. So the reality is men will make mistakes. Men will fall short of expectations. There are fathers who will not always be perfect. The truth is we're not looking for perfect men. Sure. We're looking for work in progress who can take responsibility. So there's a time in your life where you feel like, oh, I'm not being a good husband to my wife. You will not always be good. You are not Jehovah. So to balance it, I think men must realize that we're only looking for men who are responsible and who have this empathy enough to understand that my wife is not nagging. It is just an expectation from a point of, as a man, these are the things you should do, right? And you also need to understand that when my wife when they have expectations, it is not from a place of trying to put you under pressure. Because there are a lot of expectations by default. If I talk to a woman today to say, come and be my wife, what I mean is I can die for you. What I mean is I can carry you.
I can put a roof over your head. I can feed you. I can take care of the children we bear.
So the things men now do is to say, oh, when there are demands on this level of responsibility, right? You say, oh, you know, I'm going to step away. There's a narrative of toxic masculinity, right? So when men understand that the call to responsibility, and responsibility is simple, responsibility, responding to the things you are able to do. If you tell your wife, babe, I only earn ₦1 million, we cannot go for vacation this year. It's a different thing if the woman is now saying, oh, see, I'm going to leave your house and all of that, right? So I think being able to balance it is so critical. And a bit of the culture. Africa is an interesting place. We have a deficit in leadership and management. And if there's a problem with masculinity, by default, it will be heightened, right? There's a need for us to start something I call cultural rewiring. And ladies, I wouldn't even lie to you. It starts with the family. It starts with the mother and the father. I grew up in a family where if my mom spanks, my mom used to be the beater.
The disciplinarian.
Yes, if my mom gives you a dirty slap and you go to meet my dad, my dad will say, well, the problem is, she has done it and there's nothing we can do about it. What it has done for me is, it has helped me see my parent as one party.
You can't split them.
I can't split them. But we have a lot of families where boys assume mommy is the caring person, dad is the tough person, right? So if we can start the cultural rewiring to say that if mommy says no, if you go to meet daddy says no as well. It's going to be no.
No, my parents did that.
Yeah.
Right? So those are part of the things we need to do. Then we need to start something called re-education. So if you, and I've done it before. I went into a class, all boys, I brought in a girl, and I said, this girl is going to be your leader in this class. All the boys revolted. Because there is a default understanding
that boys should always lead.
And it's a religious problem too. The Bible didn't say the man will be the head of the woman. The Bible says the husband will be the head of the wife. Yes. So men by default assume the moment I walk into a room, I must be the god.
Wait, take that back a bit.
Yes.
The Bible did not say that man will be the head of the woman.
The Bible said the husband will be the head. So if I'm not married to you by default,
how are you my leader?
Why do you feel like you're obligated to be my leader?
Ayodele, I need to hold you there because you are spitting. Honestly, this is a conversation that cannot end on this table.
No.
And I know you're talking. I know you grew up in a dad and mom kind of home.
Correct.
And right now, we are having more broken homes than two-parent homes.
Absolutely.
And the crisis of this absentee fatherhood in Nigeria is a crisis. Because I'll say that let's say 4 in 10 marriages are now single-parent home, either female or male. It's either the man is raising the children alone, or the woman is raising the children alone. What role do fathers and male role models play in shaping this generation of men? Because I will tell you, I have growing sons. And I know when I see a lacuna.
Correct.
And I know it's a big one. Because you might pass through it when they were young, toddlers, they might not know. But when they become assertive teenagers, that is when that man absence is really felt. Where are all these fathers? Where are all these people you can call role models? Because people will now tell me things like, oh, even if they don't have a dad in the house, find them male role models. But now, to even understand role models, now we're beginning to see that one man project outside. I apologize. Is not who they are.
Inside.
So maybe a man that is gruff and bruff outside. When he's one-on-one, he's a timid cat. So how are we bridging? Because nothing is the same. How do we bridge the absentee father's game? Is it just to look for role models, or how do they get these role models? Is it the mother that will get it, or the parents, the children that will get it for themselves? It's just a lot in that pool for me.
I agree, and that's such a fantastic question, in my opinion. I tell parents, boys need men. That's the truth. You cannot disconnect it. I know there are some absent fathers who are just present in the home. But the truth is, boys always look forward to talking to men. If I meet with your son, I can assure you there are things your son would have never told in your life that the boy will tell me in just 30 minutes of saying, I understand, I get what you're going through. The boy will tell me, see, this is the problem with my mom. But she can't understand.
It's like I hear my son in your ear.
You know, I absolutely understand, right? So I think my first call is to men. The truth is, I know because there's a lot of noise on social media, men should be this, men should be that, and sometimes it could be overwhelming. The truth is, we don't need perfect role models. We need available role models. I lead a boy-child transformation movement, and when people talk to me and say, oh, you know, I like you, I like what you're doing, it doesn't mean I'm perfect. It doesn't mean I have a perfect life. I have my shortcomings. I have places where I'm still working on, but I've invested my life in the last 5 years. We've engaged over 500,000 boys across Africa, just being able to create a space for them to be able to express themselves, right? So I think the first call is to men. Wherever you are, your church, your mosque, your office, you don't need to touch 1 million boys to change the world. You only need to talk to a boy. You need to reach out to a boy. You need to be able to engage a boy. You need to be able to ask the boys question. What are you going through? High school. a lot of boys are losing their self-esteem because of bullying in school.
Yeah.
But they won't be able to tell mommy because they feel like mommy will not understand. If I tell mommy that someone slapped me, you know, it's like, and you know, we all have this ego from childhood.
Yeah.
All of us. Talk to a 9-year-old boy. If I tell mommy someone slapped me, mommy won't understand. But if I walk up to a 9-year-old boy and say, why are you behaving this way? It's because someone is bullying me in school. And I can tell you in an hour, after having the one-on-one conversation, he would be able to open up and say, these are the things affecting me. So I think for men, we need to rise up. And I think this is a call to all men. We need a lot of work in progress men who can come to the table. The work we do with Boy Scouters, we find it hard. And guess what, Tolu? We have more volunteers as women in Boy Scouters than men.
I was just about to volunteer my time.
We have more volunteers as women. So when we check our volunteers database, in fact, my core team, there are only 3 men out of about 12 of us. So the question is,
where are these men?
Where are the men?
And so you know what? I find that part of this conversation quite interesting because when we're fighting for the girl child, we'll see men come in and say, "But what about the boy child?" The moment they say, "What about the boy child?"
Yes.
If we put the pressure on you to start something for the boy child, they disappear.
It's a
so we are waiting. We are doing our own fights for the girl child and the woman, and you still want us to be the ones to fight for the boy child and the man again. How?
And just to let men know, we don't need perfect men to be role models. We need men who are work in progress, at work, wherever you are, right? And you know, ma'am, the truth is, the best way to raise a boy is if you're vulnerable with the boy. If you can tell the boy what you're going through. I've gone through it before. I mean, I've done all sorts. So when I tell boys, see, there's nothing you're trying to do now that I've not done before. I can understand. I know there was a time in my life where I left school totally. I stopped going to school. My mom,
pastor's children.
Yes.
Why are you people like this?
My mom used to be a teacher.
Why are you like this?
Why are we like this, PKs?
I stopped and I was lying. I was going to play games every morning because of a maths teacher.
So this generation's version of games is gambling.
Gambling.
Yeah.
This generation's version of games is just being outside doing drugs.
Doing drugs.
So, I want to, you touched on something briefly, and I need us to really go there because oftentimes we talk about it, but there's not enough conversation, I'm so sorry, among men about it, and that's the sexual abuse situation.
Correct.
So global statistics reveal that 1 in 6 boys worldwide experience some form of sexual abuse before adulthood. And one of the most troubling aspects of this is that this is a situation that's ignored. Yeah. I remember many, many years ago, I have friends, if they're watching, they remember, we were at a friend's birthday party, and I don't know how we got on the conversation of how men lost their virginity.
Correct.
Almost the entirety of the men in that room lost it before they turned 18.
Yeah.
There was an aunt, there was a nanny involved, and there's a difference. When we talk about sexual abuse for girls, we label it as what it is. Correct. But even men and boys among themselves, it's almost like it's a conquest. Like this thing I did that makes me, that shows that I'm a man. Yeah. I remember when Chris Brown talked about losing his virginity and how he bigged it up. It was, you know, I'm this small, I'm a young guy, a young boy, but it was this older woman that wanted me. It's a different thing when we talk about it with girls. So I want you to think about it in terms of what are the things that the young boys have told you in the course of your work and how it impacts them as they grow. We'll pick it up. We'll pick up that part of the conversation after this break. Raising the next generation of Nigerian men right here on Jasiri. And in the midst of the conversations, I wish we could tell you what we talk about when we go on break, but sometimes it's not safe for work, so let's leave it at that. But Solomon Ayodele is still with us. He's the founder and CEO of Boys Quarters Africa, NGO that works with young men and young boys in particular in helping them shape who they are. So Solomon, before the break, I was asking you about the sexual abuse of young boys and sharing that situation. Listening to grown men, a lot of them at that time in their 30s and 40s, talking about their first sexual experience as a young boy, being a nanny, being an aunt, and they don't see it through the same lens that we see that when it happens to girls, and even society doesn't see it the same way. But in the course of your work, what are some of the stories that young boys have shared with you, and how has it impacted them? Because you talked about baggage, and here we've talked about, we have bruised and broken people who go and marry, and so two bruised and broken people marry, and unfortunately, they're likely to raise bruised and broken children.
There's a campaign we run called Boys to Campaign. In fact, my very first TV appearance in 2018, I was walked out of the studio because I was talking about the abuse of boys, and the guy said, bro, you cannot be saying the truth.
Wow.
That you cannot be saying the truth. And I needed to validate that hypothesis in 2020 when we ran the survey. About 2,000 men, and it was simple, about 3 or 4 questions. Yeah. It was the first time you had, and it was clear, before the age of 18, over 97% of them, right? What I tell people is abuse, irrespective of the gender. Right? A lot of boys, and let me share 2 examples. There's a boy in Ilorin where we had gone for Boys to Campaign, and the boy walked up to me and said, see, that is it possible for us to take this Boys to Campaign to the church? And I was wondering, when boys ask those kind of questions, you want to peel up the layer. So I asked, what's your church and all of that? He said, he just wants his dad and mom to be a part of the conversation. And the boy said his lesson teacher, that when he leaves school, he goes to stay with the lesson teacher, and the lesson teacher would ask him to help first to rub the back. After rubbing the back, I don't want to go granular.
We understand where it's going.
So
is it a boy child to a male teacher or a male or
female teacher?
Oh, okay.
A female teacher.
Women are perpetrators too.
Yeah. So he said he's been going through that for about 2 years, and he said the problem is he's not sure how to
tell his parents.
Verbalize it to his parents, right? That every time he tries to bring it up, his mom will say, "Oh, how is your teacher?" When he tries to say, "Oh, mommy, I'm there," no, don't worry. It's because you don't understand mathematics. You're trying to blah 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 and all of that, right? So, yeah, and we had to reach out to the parents. You can imagine religious parents and all of that. I had to threaten them, saying, "I'm going to report to the government if you guys don't fix this," right? So, and a couple of other stories that we have documented. In fact, we're thinking of running a documentary this year about the abuse of boys, where we can get people to share their stories. A lot of men are walking, talking cadaver. You see, some men, they died 20 years ago, but they are celebrating their 70th birthday because they've been bruised. In fact, I was speaking on a radio station in Ibadan. A 50-year-old man called that he was abused at the age of 13. That the memory is yet to, because you don't know this is an abuse. It's almost like a layered trauma. You were someone abused by a woman at the age of 13, and you just keep growing up, and by the time they are 18, and when they can now do it, they then become something else.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, I was going to go there, right? Because it feels like this validates the saying, hurt people, hurt people.
Correct.
Right? A lot of times we don't focus more on the effect on guys.
Yeah.
And this is going to make me twist the conversation a little, talking about abuse. Now, we know that men can be victims too.
Correct.
But ladies are mostly the victim.
Absolutely.
Do you think that this is one of the major reasons why men become abusers? Not all men, like some men become abusers, because if there's the statistics that show that ladies, for example, when they get abused at childhood or a young age, they either become obsessed by the idea of sexual intercourse or disgusted by it. So is it the same thing for men who get abused and don't talk about it for a long time? Eventually they realize that they actually like the idea and start inflicting that on other ladies.
I agree, but it's also just set the tone to say that I don't think trauma is an excuse for misbehavior.
Of course.
Right? So the fact that you were abused doesn't mean you go around. But the truth is, for all the boys and men I've seen who've gone through this, there's a layered pain in there, right? And it's a combination of several things. And yes, this is the reason why when they have a lot of emotions, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, and the truth is, men will tell you it was nothing, but the truth is, there's something to them.
Yeah, they
are
just don't want to acknowledge
that
it.
someone used them. So what then happens is called reverse psychology, where they then see women as objects.
Yeah.
So they want to just mess up with women, they want to just misbehave. So it's a major root cause. In fact, we got a grant from Oxfam Voices last year. We ran a campaign across Lagos, Enugu, and Abuja called Project Sabi, where we're trying to mobilize men and boys as allies in ending gender-based violence. About 1,000 men. It was the most emotionally excruciating project of my life. So we went to car parks and all of that to talk to men, conductors. You need to get their feedback. So you ask the man to say, if you get home and you want to sleep with your wife, and your wife says no, you want to say, how she go talk no now? I go slap him now. I go tell her make you open. And I told the guy, I would ask them, so when was the first time you ever had intercourse in your life? I said, when I did small now, I did sell up when I be 13 for Enugu, and one woman, my mama younger sister, and you realize that it's a layered trauma. So you just see, I mean, I don't like to bring in religion into conversations like this, but you see, Abraham lied about his wife. Isaac did the same thing. Jacob multiplied it. His children then, made it in a level where it became, this is the way it works. So when troubled people get married to troubled people, they raise troubled people. And those troubled people raise troubled people. So we live in a very convoluted world where we need to then get granular. This is not the time to make assumptions and say, oh, if your child returns from school and the boy is quiet, don't just say, oh, why are you being reserved? No. There has to be something.
Especially if that's not their natural personality.
If you see your child come back, someone who is reserved and becomes very outspoken, you need to dig deep and ask questions.
Solomon, say yes. Say I do. I do mean he will come back. I do. Because we have a secret.
The hour is gone. The hour is gone, honestly.
When I heard the noise in my... I want to thank you so much, Solomon.
Has he said I do yet?
He said I do.
Oh, he said I do.
We do. This has been such an insightful, eye-opening, interesting conversation. There's a lot of work to be done. Today's conversation has just shown that. Raising the next generation of Nigerian men is more about just tradition. It's about transformation. It's about equipping boys with the right values, emotional intelligence, and the ability to navigate an ever-changing world with integrity and purpose. If we want a better Nigeria, we must be intentional about the men we are shaping, men who lead with empathy, with respect, with accountability. The work starts in our homes, our schools, our communities. Guys, the work starts with us. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.
Wow. Not many people can make these ladies.